Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So this episode kind of started, it's something I've definitely noticed it this season. I don't know if they've done it in past seasons or not. Maybe they have. It's been a while since I've seen some of the earlier seasons, so do forgive me if I'm blanking on it. But basically, it's one of those situations where it's like, oh, they're investigating one case and end up stumbling across another case. Because they kind of open up with what the case is going to be about, because you see this guy, and it's like, oh, you see his wife, his quote-unquote wife fixing him some cereal, these 2 bowls of cereal, and then like he's coming by, he's all chipper and everything, and you see the bruise on his side. It's like, oh man, is it one of those abusive relationships type of things? Oh man, this is going, oh man, poor lady, man, this sucks. And then it's like, oh man, this really sucks. I was like, I wonder where's this going to go? Because I was like, normally you don't see a situation, you don't see a murder from this perspective or whatever. So I was like, okay, so what is it? I was thinking maybe it's a situation like, oh, they're witnesses to something else. Or maybe it is, they're just taking a very different perspective on the murder in this particular case. But nevertheless, but then all of a sudden he like she has a collar around her neck and he hooks it up. I'm like, oh crap, it's even worse than I thought. But to kind of tie this case in with like how they stumble across it is because like Sherlock and Gregson are dealing with the case they were dealing with at that time. It's like literally at the tail end of that case, they're confronting the killer. It's like this auctioneer dude who basically killed a security guard. Not killed him, bashed his head in to the point he was in a coma for a baseball card. It was a whole weird situation like that. Because that's what Sherlock was like, yeah, you literally bashed his head in for a baseball card. I don't understand why. I mean, obviously he understands why, because it's for money reasons, obviously. So, but at the same time, that same guy, his name's Ryan, from earlier in the episode with the lady he's got shackled in the place. He ends up like being on the phone because he sees Gregson and Sherlock there, and he gets a little spooked and he's on his phone. Sherlock starts reading his lips, and it's like, I don't know if the police are here for me or not. Nevertheless, to be safe, take care of it. And he was like, wait, take care of her. And it was like, wait, what? So Sherlock follows him. While he's on the elevator, Sherlock grabs his phone really quickly and goes through it and sees the video of the said woman we saw at the very beginning. Dude sneaks up on Sherlock. Sherlock kind of gets another hold up. It's like, where is she? Where is she? And then Gregson comes and breaks it up. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong person. Now, at first, because I was wondering, I was like, why is it he telling Gregson? Is this something he's going to try and handle on his own? I was like, he shouldn't do that. I was like, why? I was like, it doesn't make sense. But then he kind of explains himself later on to Joan. I'm like, okay, it makes sense, because it's like, they wouldn't have probable cause to act. And even if they, if they acted, all it would do is kind of spook him. Which is actually kind of the main reason why Sherlock pushes so hard in this episode. Because there's a moment later on when he's got 2 coffees in his hand, and Bale reaches for him. He's like, no, that's not for you. They're both for me. I didn't sleep that well. Because like, I think he puts a lot of pressure on himself in this particular episode, because he blames himself, because he feels like everything got expedited a lot because of his interference. It's like already them being there kind of spooked him a little bit, but especially when the whole situation of they end up arresting Ryan, initially obviously for like the whole DVD thing, just getting some like hold him on anything so that they can get time to kind of investigate. Because that Ryan dude is a SOB, especially when time was up and he was let loose. He just kind of like, he was mocking Sherlock too. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you guys, you're right. You're 100% right about me. I might as well confess something, all right? It's like, yeah, that mannequin movie, not really that into it. It's just like, you scumbag. It's like, he's just there taunting them in the face. And he's like, they're like, just give us your accomplice and things will go easier on him. And he just refuses to give in. And it's just like, oh, you suck as a human being. But going back to it, it's like Sherlock feels like because of what he did, it's going to put, I think one lady's name is Prida, put her life in danger even more because of what he's doing. Because it's like, oh, they know that the police are definitely on the trail now, so they're going to expedite it even more. And just like, oh, take care of, especially later on when they found like, kind of narrowing down the search area, they end up finding blood on the beach. And it's like, oh, it could either be Prida's or it could be the accomplices. Either way, trying to, tie up loose ends and whatnot. So, I mean, they did luckily find a place, but sadly it wasn't her there. There's actually another woman hidden there. So it's like, this guy, Prida isn't the first woman he's ever done this to. But then things kind of take it even more of a twist when you end up finding out. It's like, oh, actually, things are extra weird, because because Joan ends up noticing the milk in the refrigerator, and then she's like, oh man, I was like, I recognize it. It's like, are you lactose? Asking the lady, she's lactose intolerant. She doesn't really understand it. She's like, oh no, regular milk is fine. It's like, oh, was there something wrong with the milk? It's like, no. She thinks about it. It's like, I've seen that exact same milk used by Ryan's ex-wife because they've been split up for like 6 years because that's someone that Joan had investigated earlier in the episode, and it pieced together like basically they're a twisted duo that basically they kidnapped people when they were together, but when they split up, they they kind of did their own thing. Like essentially this whole situation, they stayed partners in this situation. It's like I think they split up and kept their own people. The lady they found was captive, I think, is my understanding of it, and the woman from the beginning obviously is Ryan's. That's what I was thinking. I mean, not unless they were both Ryan's, but I get the feeling like it was actually his wife because they both joined it together. But then when they got divorced, they kind of split them. It's like, okay, I take my captive, you take yours type of situation. It was like super, super demented, and effed up, and because that's what he actually meant when he was like, oh, take care of her. It's like, no, legitimate, like take care of her, which does beg the question of no, maybe it really was Ryan's. Maybe the original lady is maybe Prita belonged to his wife, and that the lady they ended up rescuing first would actually belong to Ryan. I don't know what the case may be. Nevertheless, it still doesn't change the fact that they're a screwed up couple, especially because when they finally caught up to her, she was about to burn the place down, trying to cover her tracks and everything. And then on top of that, you end up finding out that the person that died at the beach, because they were thinking like, oh yeah, Ryan had killed the accomplice, but it's like the other way around. The accomplice had killed him. His ex-wife killed him. And they're like, oh yeah, just save us the trouble. Tell us where your ex-husband's body is. And just like, oh, it's like, oh, what if something did happen to him and he ended up in the bottom, like in the water or whatever. It's like, you'd never find his body in Charlotte. It's like, well, basically your husband, whatever special place in hell, he's fine where he is, and you trust him, you're gonna be in your own form of hell soon enough. So it's like with or without his body, it doesn't change the fact is you're screwed. So, because for one, I had my suspicions of his wife. Why? Just because of the actress they had playing his wife. Because I've seen her in stuff recently, so I was just kind of like, it's gonna be you, isn't it? I just had, for one, it's that, but also just because I was like, I don't know, I don't know, the way she talked about her husband, it wasn't necessarily out of spite. She acted like it was out of spite, but more so than anything, it was just kind of like, I was like, I don't know, it seems like you're forcing him. I was like, I hate to give him a compliment, but he was good at his job. But it's like, there's something hinky about the way she was acting. But going back to the point of like the actress, it's just because like even like she has a recurring part on The Blacklist. She was literally in the most recent episode. She was also in other stuff I've seen. She was also like a recurring character in American Gothic too. So it's just like, that was just one reason she was very suspicious to me. But once again, a big reason is because she was acting so shady. It's just, I don't know, just something felt off about the whole situation. To kind of put it even more instances on how different Sherlock act during this case. It was never like anything big, but it was like subtle things because Joan came in, he had fixed himself a PB&J and he was listening to jazz music and she's like, okay, this is weird. Normally he'd be blaring some, like she used an example of like, oh, playing heavy metal or something like that. It's like, he kind of wanted to give things a different, approach and kind of do something a little boring to see if it could help him a little bit. And it's kind of like, just because he really was taking his case very, not like he doesn't take any other case seriously, but it's just because he was pushing himself because he felt responsible. Because even when they rescued the first lady, Sherlock still wasn't kind of like pepping up. Even Gregson was like, hey, take the win. We found one lady. It's like, if it weren't for you, running into Ryan, like figuring this whole situation out, reading his lips like that, we wouldn't have even been able to save this lady. So take the win. But for Sherlock, it's just like, because for Prita, like she'd been missing for 5 years. Her friend had went to the cops, like I think it was the cops as well as like the ICE agency. I think that's what it was. No. It wasn't ICE. It was definitely like a different police department because she brought it up too. She was like, she brought up the fact that she was in a police department. It wasn't necessarily that one, but like she multiple times went back and forth being like, okay, look for my friend. But it's like they kind of shoot her away. Didn't really give her much thought, which is super sad because people in their situation is just like, just kind of get pushed under the radar. So it's like, I mean, like, she'd been in that situation for 5 years, I mean, there's no telling, like, how many other women that they've dealt with that don't never got found out of, like, were never discovered, like that they probably got rid of women because it's like they've done, I don't know, maybe Preto was someone that, no, because they were divorced for like they've been divorced for like 6 years. Preto had only been missing for like 5, so you could argue to say like, yeah, definitely they've had previous victims in the past, so it's like they were not that fortunate and weren't, they were able to save 2 victims, but it's like how many people did that this demented couple take in the past that they weren't able to find. And then another Saturday episode focused on Shinwell. This is basically taking place after, Sherlock and Watson and Shinwell made that deal of like, hey, they'll train him in the art of deception so that he can be better at doing this whole undercover thing. Which he's kind of been slipping at it lately. Like, Joan is very disappointed because it's like his focus isn't there. Like, she's asking him to do all those, like, unlock all those locks, but he can't. Even at one point saying like, okay, if it's you at the door, you have to break in if you want to get in, but he couldn't. But essentially because it seemed like he was distracted, and it seems the reason why he was distracted is because basically he was setting up this SBK deal, basically a new supplier and stuff like that. And basically he's like, yo, this new deal, if I do it right, I can get a lot of praise from the gang, and they'll want to put me in a higher position. Because, the higher he goes up to the ranks, the more he gets closer to the big names in the game. And so, a lot easier to kind of take the whole thing down. You go from the top, with the Hydra, cut off all the heads, and the body will fall, essentially. So, which at the time, like, Joan is like, are you stupid? I mean, granted, she didn't say that. Essentially, she was saying that it's like, don't be stupid. It's like, that's idiotic. You're not trained for this. You're not ready for this. It's like, sure, you've been hanging out with these lieutenants and stuff like that, but they're not that smart. The people at the top, the higher you go up in the organization, the smarter they get, because it's like they have to be smart to them out of anyone else. It's like lieutenants, they're there to take the falls, but the top dogs have to make sure they do stuff in just the right way so that they don't get caught. So they're actually pretty smart. And then on top of that, you make it so that they're very paranoid. They're looking for any, like, whoa, like, what's going on with this? It's like, okay, you act a little shady. So it's like one slip up and you're done type of situation. So it's like you haven't been training long enough to really take advantage of it, because you've also been sloppy with your training lately. So it's like even that's not really worth it. But Shinwell's kind of like, nah, I got this. Don't worry about it. I grew up with these people, or I grew up with people like them. So it's like, yo, if it wasn't for me going to jail for 10 years, I would be these people. So it's like, I got this handled. Goes to meet with the dude he's trying to make the deal with. I think his name was like Diego. And he's trying to make the deal, but Diego is just acting a little fidgety and stuff like that. He wouldn't move on it. And then Shinwell ends up talking to Joan later on because he didn't go through with the deal. To actually impress Joan, he ends up unlocking most of the locks. Not all of them. He unlocks at least 23 of them. I think he said it included him breaking into the place too. So, but it turns out, like, he started noticing like certain things about Diego, like, kept touching his face, just acting a little squirrely and stuff like that. And then he ends up finding out that Diego was basically running dry on the product. So basically he wanted money, like half the money up front. Basically he was going to screw Shinwell out, like screw him over. And definitely that whole deal, I mean, luckily he turned it down, because if he had gone through with it, it would have ended up screwing him over. I'm granted he like found out about the whole squirrely nature stuff like after. I mean, he ended up finding out about the money stuff deep, not running dry on the product type of situation. Like all his suppliers and stuff are kind of running dry. Like, he found that out afterwards, but just because of the guy's nature and just the way he was acting, like he picked up on his cues thanks to Sherlock and Jones training him. So it does help. I mean, it seems like they're doing a lot more. They're teaching him different languages and stuff like that, because it seemed like he was kind of thinking like, I think even with their help, he was really thinking like, no, I got this. Like, this is my world. But it's like, the fact is, he's been out of the game for a while. Plus, they understand his world a little bit better than he does, because it's like they investigate technically his world on many different occasions. And it's also thanks to Shinwell, they actually found out something. They would like that dude Darnell. They were able to chase him down in the episode. Obviously, he ended up not being a suspect. I mean, he ended up being a suspect, but he wasn't the actual accomplice they were looking for. But it was like he ended up helping them track him down like in 2 hours, because he's kind of like Sherlock. He's got a lot of connections, so. Because Sherlock had brought up something interesting in this episode. I didn't really quite understand it because essentially he was like, has Shinwell ever had a mentor or teacher before? And Joan was kind of like, no. Maybe he's trying to say, like, this new relationship they had was something new to Shinwell and he really wasn't associated with it yet. But it seems like, because of that situation with Diego, it does seem like he is more motivated to be like, yo, I got this. Your training helped me out then. Like, he needed a situation to kind of prove to him that it really was worth it and it was working. So it's like, hey, it worked out in a situation like that, because if I had gone back to SBK with that whole situation, definitely would have killed me. So it's like, yo, like, I gotta stay on top of my game. It's like, these two know what they're talking about, which they really do. So I don't know. It's like a little kind of push forward in that progression of, like I said, the overarching storyline of this season. So just a little progression, not too much. So, but overall, very good episode. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.